On Sunday night, the 20th of October, 4 people lost their lives in this tour helicopter ride operation when they smashed into this nearly unlit 1,000-foot tall communications tower near downtown Houston, Texas. My name's Juan Brown. You're watching the Blanco Lirio channel. We've got a lot of new details on this crash. Let's check it out. Starting first with the Aviation Safety Network, Sunday, 20 October, 1954 local time. Nearly 8 o'clock at night, well after sunset, a Robinson R44 Raven II helicopter, owner-operator Porter Equipment Holdings, LLC, registered as November 881 Kilo Echo, 4 fatalities, 4 occupants on board. A Robinson R44 Raven struck a 1,000-foot communications tower in Houston, Texas, and crashed. The 4 occupants perished, the helicopter was destroyed, and the tower collapsed, and there was a post-crash fire on the ground. Here's a picture of the accident helicopter, a 2002 model R44 Robinson helicopter powered by the Lycoming IO540 engine. Information has recently come to light that this was in fact a ride helicopter operation operated by National Helicopter Solutions out of Ellington Field there in Houston, and these were the different ride packages that NHS helicopters operated out of Ellington. Apparently they just began this helicopter ride operation out of Ellington's airport, or Houston's airport, Ellington, back on the 10th of October. They have 3 different ride options or loop options, and it's believed that this accident loop was this 50-mile loop called the H-Town Express Sunset North Side for $275. The 1,000-foot tall tower that the helicopter hit had recently changed hands and was picked up by SBA Communications just about a month ago. Looking at the aviation sectional chart of the area where the crash occurred, the helicopter was operating out of Ellington Field and was doing a 50-mile counterclockwise loop like this, and it's believed that the tower that they struck was this tower right here, 1,011 feet tall and 1,047 feet MSL sea level is the top of that tower. The helicopter was operating at 600 feet. Looking at this airspace, it looks like the helicopter was operating in Houston's Class Bravo airspace, as this section of airspace extends all the way down to the surface. But the air traffic controllers are not separating the helicopter from obstacles on the ground. They're separating the helicopter traffic from other traffic in the air. It's up to the pilot in command to maintain 500-foot clearance between any persons or obstacles like this 1,000-foot tower. But it's difficult to avoid an obstacle at night if you can't properly see that obstacle. From this security camera footage of the actual crash, we can see the helicopter approaching from the right and barely see the tower here in the distance, with only one single flashing light that's believed to be located at the very top of the tower in operation. This tower is supposed to have an entire series of obstacle lights running up and down the side of the tower so that pilots can see and avoid the obstacle. When SBA Communications took over ownership of the tower, they knew that the obstacle lights were in op on the tower, and they notified the FAA via the proper channels that the obstacle lights were out, and the FAA did issue a NOTAM, Notice to Air Missions now, regarding the condition of this tower, and this NOTAM can be found in this huge list of NOTAMs for Houston's Hobby Airport. And this is the problem with NOTAMs, is they are so very hard to discern. And of course, it's incumbent on the pilot to be aware of all NOTAMs affecting their flight. And if we scroll way down here to the bottom of the list of NOTAMs for Houston's Hobby Airport, way down here around 1073, I believe, is the number of the NOTAM, obstruction, date 10/17/2024 to 10/31 of 2024, obstacle tower light. Here's the coordinates for the tower, 7.4 nautical miles north-northwest of Houston, 1,033 feet, 999 feet above the ground level, which doesn't exactly agree with the chart. And just reading this NOTAM, it's difficult to discern exactly what's wrong with this tower other than something is up with the lighting system on this tower. And this is the obscure NOTAM systems that the pilots have to go through in order to find the NOTAMs that are affecting their route of flight. Here's the FAA advisory circular that governs the lighting of obstacles. And way down here on page 72 of this document, we can see specifically what's wrong with the lighting of this tower, why it was NOTAMed. There's supposed to be a series of obstacle lights running all up and down the tower. Not just a single little blinky at the very top of the tower, but a whole series of obstacle lights lighting up that tower, because this pilot at 600 feet is 400 plus feet below the top of the tower, and probably, more likely than not, never saw the blinking light at the top of the tower. And this regulation spells out exactly how bright the light needs to be, what the frequency of the flashing of the light needs to be, what the color of the light needs to be, and what the spacing is on the altitude of these lights or the elevation of these lights. And in this case, none of the obstacle lights alongside the tower were operational. If we take a look at the ADS-B data here on ADS-B Exchange, we can see the helicopter was operating at about 600 feet when they impacted the tower located right here off of North Velasco Street. We can take this data and download it, the KML file here, and put it on Google Earth. Here's what the data looks like on Google Earth. And if we zoom in here, even on Google Earth, it has a hard time discerning this tower. You can see the shadow of the tower here. Here's a bit of the tower showing up in the 3D view of Google Earth. And if we go down here to Google Maps, we see the tower located right here. Take a look here from North Velasco Street. That's what the tower looks like from the ground during the day. Note also these huge guy wires supporting the tower. And the only light that was on this tower operational at the time of the accident was one small blinking red light near the top of the tower. On previous rides along this particular loop, pilots successfully navigated around this tower, but they did remain at about the same altitude, 600 feet. So investigators will be looking into this and determining, has this pilot already flown this loop before? Did she know that that tower was there and that it was unlit that night? Was this her first flight of the tour along this path? Had she done this tour before along this path? Was there a distraction in the cockpit? There's probably no recorded evidence inside the aircraft that'll be preserved as a result of this accident to help them determine answer some of these questions, but these are some of the additional holes in the Swiss cheese model here that investigators will be uncovering. These tour ride operations have been on the front and center on the radar of the NTSB for years, especially because of the record of the crashes involving helicopter tour ride operations in Hawaii. And in Hawaii, a lot of these accidents involved weather, taking these ride operations into weather, or in this case, in Houston, doing the ride at night. And of particular concern is which FAR do these tour rides operate under? Remember, there are basically 3 layers of safety with shades of gray in between each one of them. But Part 91 is general aviation that most of us get to enjoy as pilots, gives us the most freedom from regulation. Part 135 for charter operations, and then Part 121 for airlines or regularly scheduled operations. Well, these ride hopping operations usually operate under a special provision under FAR Part 91, that part which has the least amount of regulations. But the NTSB has been making a lot of recommendations to the FAA in how to regulate these tour operations, and the FAA has been slowly coming along with increasing some of the regulatory oversight of these operations. But to me, trying to do a night operation over downtown Houston at 600 feet with known obstacles There's at least 3 towers right in this area here that exceed 1,000 feet above the ground. Just seems crazy to me. I would not recommend such an operation. But unfortunately, to the flying public, they assume that all these risks have been mitigated and taken care of. But until the holes in the Swiss cheese model line up against you, do you begin to see the problems with the program. Thank you so much for your support of this channel, especially the folks over on Patreon that make this content possible. See you here.